Are we all ready for one more round of Big 12 craziness? Well, buckle up this weekend. We've got 4 teams in the conference championship race, and it should be a whole lot of fun like it's been all season. We all knew that the Big 12 was going to be the funnest, most fun league in college football, and it's delivered. So, one more round. Here we go. And we've got a packed show. So, Nathan Brown and myself, Nathan, Big 12 Mafia, of course, we got together a couple weeks ago and decided, hey, we want to talk Big 12 football each and every week. So here we are, and we have loaded up with some amazing guests. Right below me, we got Levi Stevenson from Wide Right Natty Light, SB Nation, Iowa State, and Levi starting a show right here at the Voice of College Football. So we'll tell you more about that in just a few minutes. And Michelle Gardner from the Arizona Republic, and Michelle needing to extend her football season, unlike has been recent years at Arizona State. So, Levi, good to see you. Michelle, great to have you back as well. Nathan, what's going on today?
Another wild weekend in the Big 12. I think it's really good, though, because it has a lot of eyes on it. And nationally, that's what the Big 12 needs is more people watching them. So yeah, it's chaos, and it doesn't look good when they do their picks on Tuesdays because they're always talking about how the Big 12 is down. But in my opinion, I think this publicity will pay off dividends in the future.
Okay, and for some Big 12 fans out there, you may not want to hear some of my other shows when they get some comments about the Big 12 too. But I love the Big 12. I'm going to start with Levi only because I'm going to break the tie because I picked Iowa State to win the Big 12. And so I've got a slight rooting interest. I like my predictions to be right. So I picked the Cyclones at the beginning of the year. Levi, this football team took a 2-game losing streak a few weeks ago, but it's battled back, had a few things fall into its lap.
Yeah, it's been a weird month for Iowa State fans, especially because that 2-game streak, and people kind of forget too that before the 2-game streak was a bye week and then the UCF week where Iowa State had to battle back at the very end and go on a fourth quarter drive there. So it had become clear that the injury issues on defense were starting to really catch up in a big way, especially at linebacker, and then eventually made its way to the offensive side of the ball where you had Dylan Barrett at left guard missing a game or two, and you have now 3 injured tight ends where you don't have Ben Bramer, Cooper Alexander, or Tyler Moore available. So now you're down 3 tight ends on top of all of your linebackers that you were missing and stuff like that. So the injury issues had piled up there for a couple games, and now they've strung together a couple good wins in a row. If you want to call the Utah win a good win, I guess. Any win's a good one, I suppose, but it certainly was not a pretty one for Iowa State. I mean, it seemed to me that Iowa State was very clearly the better football team, but just absolutely refused to do anything to put that game away. Just gave Utah every shot at it. But you got your 2 wins in a row now, and now you are in a pretty good spot where if you win this weekend, you're in a pretty good spot to get in. I mean, there isn't anybody in the conference right now that actually has a true win and in, but Arizona State and Iowa State are the closest to it, just based on who plays who and who kind of the favorites are and stuff like that. Iowa State and Arizona State are easily the best two spots right now to get in the Big 12 championship.
Michelle, when we had you on last week, it hit me at some point, and then you agreed with me when I said, wow, this is the biggest game. This BYU game is the biggest game for Arizona State, you could argue, since 1996. And so they pulled it off. You were obviously there. And now we've got what is arguably, or maybe it's not arguable, the biggest territorial cup ever in the history of this series, because they could go on and, of course, go on to the college football playoff.
With the field rush there. But, I'll never think that this team can't do something anymore because, yes, I'm surprised, but now I've followed them long enough that now I'm really not, because they just keep proving people wrong. And they've got players that play well, that play together, that play for their coach. And it's been a phenomenal run. Who would have thought that this team would be 3-9 a year ago and be in this position? It does. I mean, I know it makes it easier now with the portal and whatnot, but to go from 3-9 to, being in, I hate to say the driver's seat, they pretty much are. it's phenomenal. These kind of turnarounds don't happen overnight. And I've actually got a story running tomorrow. The 8 things Kenny Dillingham has done that's turned this thing around so quickly.
Give us one.
Oh God, there are so many. I think he's hit big in the I think he's hit big in the transfer portal. I think that's the number one thing. You can go get a player, but that might be a great player, but maybe it's not the right fit for your program. And Kenny has said he's had to tell people no. So I guess when you look at the players that they got in the portal, Cam Scadaboo, Sam Levitt, Jordan Tyson. I mean, where do you want me to keep going? I mean, you look at all their key personnel, and a lot of them are transfer portal people. And Cam Scadaboo is somebody nobody wanted a year ago. I think it's safe to say anybody in the country would want him now. So I think hitting big in the transfer portal is a big one. And then getting the right coaches. They upgraded their coaching staff considerably during the offseason. Does it get better than having Hines Ward as your wide receiver coach? So I think those are 2 of the big ones. And like I said, you can check it out tomorrow. I listed 8, but those are 2 of them.
Nathan, what do you think about all this? I know you're not as happy as these other 2 because of what's happened to BYU the last 2 weekends.
Yeah, I sorry, that was a pregnant pause on purpose. I'm trying to think what I could possibly say that would be positive for BYU fans. Look, at the end of the day, they were in the driver's seat, and now they're not. They need some help. Kansas State, Iowa State is probably the one that everybody will point to that would have the most inclination that if BYU beats Houston, they're in. But I think going into the Big 12, everybody thought it would be maybe a 3 or 4 team race. It's just not these 3 or 4 teams. Well, Iowa State could make the claim, but certainly Kansas State, Utah, you were looking at other places. So this is not a shocker, and this is my second year in the Big 12. Certainly not been around as long as Levi, but I think probably what I would ask, and this would be to everybody, is this the worst thing in the world for the Big 12? We know that it's gonna take probably 5 or 6, maybe even 10 years to come up with 2 or 3 brands that are the brands, the carriers, the Texas, the Oklahomas for the Big 12, or maybe we'll never get there. So if you get a champion that's a 2-loss team, is that really the worst thing in the world? It does look like that from the national perspective. I want to know how you guys feel about it in your neck of the woods.
Well, I think it's a good thing. But I think when you look at the Big 12, maybe you don't have that premier brand out there, but I think there's more parity from top to bottom.
Oh, for sure.
I think that's the difference. Is the difference between the top team and the bottom team is not that great. So I think that's why you've seen a lot of close games this year, even with the favored teams that have won, like Iowa State beating Utah. Last week, I think most of us thought that was going to be a more one-sided game than it was. It went down to the wire. So I think it's just a matter of you're going to have more close games, and the difference between number 1 and number 16 is just not that great. And if that's the case, I have a hard time thinking that this is a conference where one team is going to go on a run and have a dynasty. And I think the transfer portal makes it easier for there to be more parity, because you can get that 1 or 2 guys in the transfer portal that make all the difference for your team.
I think it's an interesting conversation because it's good in that it shows that your conference has depth, and as far as, like you said, top to bottom, the Big 12 is probably deeper than pretty much any other conference as far as conference contenders from top to bottom. It doesn't have the very top end elite team like an Oregon or an Ohio State or I don't know if there is an elite SEC team at this point. But it doesn't have a really, really top end program like that, but you get that nice depth all the way through. The backside of this, and this maybe comes from being in the Big 12 for so long as we have versus you guys being fairly new to the conference, is that the Big 12 for a long time, and you guys may have seen this from the outside looking in too, for the Big 12 for a long time, outside of Texas and Oklahoma, it has really had to fight tooth and nail for every little tiny ounce of respect it has gotten outside of Texas and Oklahoma for a long time. And then you look at brands the brands in the conference, like Oklahoma State, who's been one of the best, not even actually just among non-blue bloods, but really just in general, one of the most consistently good teams in college football since for the last 20 years, basically, essentially since Gundy got there. They've been a write them down for 10 wins type of football team, and they're easily the worst team in the conference right now, like not even close. They're really bad this year. So you have that, that was another name at the beginning of the season I think some people had up there as maybe being a contender. And like TCU was just in a national championship game a couple of years ago.
Right.
And they're fine, but they're not bad, but they're not like great. They're fine. They're kind of there this year. So like, and then you look at the names that have been popping up towards the top of the standings for a long time. They're down at the bottom. Utah has been tremendously disappointing, especially after how much their fans like to jab off the offseason.
Right.
And I couldn't be happier for them to lose in an absolutely miserable fashion on Saturday. But and then so you have the Utah fans, and like Kansas State was another one that was picked to be way up there. And Kansas State, they're still a solid team. They're still a good team, but obviously they're not really in the running for a conference title bid unless some really weird things happen on Saturday. So it's good in that you have parity and you have teams that can consistently jump and you can show that it's a deep conference. However, when you get to the college football playoff conversation, different forces are at work. Different forces, especially the people that are in charge, they like to see eyeballs on TVs and they like to see brands. They like to see, because in the end, the college football playoff is a TV product and nothing more. And if you're convincing yourself that it's a real playoff where it's what have you earned type of thing, that is not what the playoff is. And you have to kind of abandon that right away. Because, there was a portion of the season where we thought that there might be two Big 12 teams in, and it was only if BYU and Iowa State basically won out and then beat one beat the other in the title game. That was the only shot to get two teams in from the Big 12. And that's because there's a big national perception issue that the Big 12 is a weaker conference because Oklahoma and Texas aren't in there anymore. Meanwhile, you look at the SEC, they only play 8 conference games and all of them have 2 or 3 losses, and there's no clear thing, but they're going to get 5 teams in because a 3-loss Texas team, I guess, gets in or something. I don't know. Or a 3-loss Alabama team is still better than a 1-loss Big 12 team. I don't know. But my overall point, though, is that by not having what known brands you do have in the conference be towards the top, it does create a little bit more of an uphill battle trying to establish national respect for the conference versus having the depth. Because I think we in the Big 12 know how good the conference is. We know how deep it is. Where BYU, like next week, that BYU plays Houston this week, and Houston was picked at the bottom of the conference, and they're still kind of down there. But I'm sure you guys are not comfortable going into this. Like, Houston,
for sure.
No, Willie Fritz is a great coach. Houston has good defense. I'm glad we caught him when we did early in the season. Like right now, BYU is absolutely on upset alert against Houston. And Arizona State is playing an Arizona team that has maybe underperformed, but they're not resting on their laurels at all. It's a rivalry game, and you still have Ted McMillan and Noah Fafita on the other side. That's plenty scary. And we are playing Kansas State, which is easily the most difficult of the matchups among the top 4. But it's a team that we've played 109 times or something like that. So it's a long, long history. But it's interesting. I don't know. We'll see. I think we'll find out a lot after this season and kind of going into next season what the perception looks like there. Where if you don't have an Oklahoma State or a TCU or a Kansas State at the top, what that looks like from a perception standpoint.
And I think we need to also look at things that are outside just the games being played. For instance, the BYU Utah game was 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago, right? And that took a ton out of both these teams. I realize you do that earlier so that you can conceivably get more people watching it. And I think the number was like 2.2 or 2.3 million for a night game, at 10:30 Eastern time.
Right.
But since that game, neither one of these teams has been right. Neither one of them has been on top of it. Versus you're getting Kansas State at the end of the season. And I think there are some advantages there. So from a strategic standpoint, the Big 12 needs to make some changes, I think, from this year, the first year of the playoff, to how they actually structure what the season looks like next year. Maybe change where some of these matchups are, not just the rivalry ones, but the ones that they think in a particular year might be marquee. Changing that timing, because in my opinion, part of this chaos could have been averted if you would have changed the schedule a little bit, maybe to make it a little bit more TV friendly, not for eyeballs, but for perception, for people to see it from the outside. Because you're right, not many people are watching Big 12 football, unfortunately. We do, and the people that are around these programs do, but it's the Big 10 and the SEC that drive these ratings, and Brett Yormark's going to have to get creative. I mean, are there other things you guys can think of that they could possibly make changes that, could make next year better than this year? Yeah.
Was it just 2 weeks ago that or was it last week or 2 weeks ago that was on game day? There was Arizona State, Kansas State game, and Desmond Howard's like, why are we even picking this game? It's like, what are you talking about? It's a top 25 matchup at the top of the conference.
Yeah.
As soon as that happened, that's all you needed to know about where the Big 12 stands in perception. It's still a Power 4 league, but ESPN does not care.
Yeah.
They don't care about the Big 12. They are not financially incentivized to care about the Big 12 or publicize it or anything. There is no financial incentive for them to do that. So we are always fighting that uphill battle, trying to get people to care about a top 25 matchup among the top few teams in the conference. It's a joke.
I'm with you, Levi. That is telling us more about their personalities and their commentators and their lack of knowledge of what's going on. They have no idea. They make stupid comments like that. As soon as I heard that comment was made, I was like, it's like when Feinbaum last year, I think going into the Big 12 championship weekend, somebody brought up the Big 12 and he's like, that doesn't even matter. Nobody's
what about him?
watch it. I don't even know. He made some comment like, I don't even know who's playing in that game. And I'm like, if you don't know who's playing college football and you're a college football analyst, then you don't belong in the sport. That's just pathetic.
And that's the worst part, is that it's still that type of mentality is still pervasive at the very top end of college football, and the people kind of pulling the strings, if you want to call it that or whatever, but the people in charge basically of making decisions, that attitude is still pervasive across that top end of college football administration and things like that. And it's frustrating. It's something that the Big 12 has been dealing with for decades.
And just to be clear, before we let Michelle chime in here, I will have an analysis at times that Big 12 fans don't like, because I don't think there's an elite team and so forth and so on. But I watch the teams, I watch the games, I know the players, I know the teams, I keep up with it. I just give whatever a fair analysis of it, at least. But I recognize it, just like every other league, as a power conference that has earned respect. These programs produce NFL players. They produce great football, great games. Like Michelle said, top to bottom, the most competitive games in the sport.
No, I agree. And it's a shame. And, trust me, out here, when Desmond Howard went off and said that, people here just went nuts.
They should have.
Maybe it's just the changing landscape of the conference, too, that you've got teams in the conference that aren't used to being in the conference yet. And in Arizona State, and yes, Utah was in it years back, as was Colorado. So maybe, some people are just slow to the party. But, I think when you get this kind of drama going into the last week, it sure gives us more to write about, and it gives you guys more to talk about. So I don't think it's a bad thing. But let's just hope that whoever comes out of the Big 12, I hope they win a game in the college football playoff, because what better way to shut people up than to go up against one of these other teams and beat them?
Michelle, you're being too kind. When I got used to Arizona State, Utah, and Colorado being in the Big 12, the day that they were announced that they were in the Big 12, I recognized, okay, they're now in the Big 12. It didn't take me 3 seconds to soak in that information and then understand and know that they were in the Big 12.
To me, the Venn diagram between people that it took time for them to understand they're in the Big 12 and people that defend the Rose Bowl and what they do is a circle. It's the same group of people. Like, they just can't understand that the Pac-12 is gone. It is what it is, and they killed themselves. So,
and I think adding on to that we're seeing, if you go top to bottom in the Pac-12 standings from last year to this year, they're not exactly lighting it up outside of 2 or 3 brands, and I would put Arizona State as one of those that have come out of that conference that are overperforming. It's easy, you can see Oregon is, but Washington's down, right? And then you have a Washington State and Oregon State that are fighting for their lives, and they're not exactly blowing it up either. So it's funny for this sort of idea that you blow up 100-year conference, and that means those teams are going to go dominate wherever they go. And college football is not like that anymore. Michelle's already pointed to the NIL changing landscape. I think from year to year in the Big 12, you're going to have 6 to 9 teams every year that could flip their season from the previous season. They could come in and compete the next year. I think it's just going to be the parity from a competitive standpoint is there. These schools all have access to relatively the same amounts of NIL funds. Yeah, the private schools have a few advantages, but some of the state schools have some advantages. So I think it's a great conference. We're all out there, marching to the beat and telling everybody how good it is. And I think it's just going to take a lot more of us. John Kurtz, Justin Coos from Coos Corner, and that's just to name a couple. We need to get the word out that there's more to this conference than just what was Oklahoma and Texas. And that's what I get out of bed every day to do. And I know you guys do too. And it might just take some time. Now, at the end of the day, though, I mean, the SEC's down. The Big Ten is easily probably the best top-heavy conference in the league or in the country. And does that matter to them? It doesn't. So we need to do something else. I think, just to get back to this question of what the Big 12 can do and Brett Yormark can do, I don't know what a lot of ideas are that we can do to sort of step out of what we've been and get to where we need to be.
I've got a question. This is not necessarily a suggestion, but we have long become accustomed to this weekend being rivalry weekend.
Yeah.
And it was that in the Big 12 and the old Big 12 as well. And I don't know if this is a strategy to basically concede that this is rivalry weekend and we're not going up against Ohio State and Michigan and Auburn, Alabama across the board. So we're going to move our rivalries at different places, except for the Iowa State-Kansas State game. But most people across the country not being dialed into that rivalry would say, well, Kansas and Kansas State's that rivalry. And they would, and then of course we've got this contingent of Texas teams that you could put together in all sorts of different configurations as being the biggest rivals. I generally think TCU and Baylor are the biggest rivals out of those. But the final weekend of the season outside of Arizona State seems to be some kind of like a hodgepodge. And that's the only thing that I can make out of it is that they don't want to compete against the rest of rivalry weekend. And therefore they move up the rivalries to spotlight those games earlier.
I think it's been a conscious effort by Brett Yormark to zig when everybody else is zagging. It's the grabbing the late night TV slots and basically putting Big 12 football on the TV from 11 to 1 a.m. basically.
Yeah.
In the end, rivalry weekend is lots of SEC rivalries. It's Big 10 rivalries. It's Ohio State, Michigan. This year it's Texas and Texas A&M. If you look back like a month when Iowa State was still undefeated and Kansas State was still kind of full bore, we were looking at that as like theoretically, you could have an 11-0 Iowa State and a 10-1 Kansas State playing for a win and in into the Big 12 title. And that'd be like game day city. Like it'd be a top 5 team and a top 10 team. That would be like, get College game day there. That is the biggest thing going on. However, that weekend is Texas and Texas A&M playing for the first time in like a decade or whatever. And then it's also Ohio State and Michigan, which obviously Michigan's bad this year. So that one's not nearly what it usually is. But, at a certain point, you just have to contend that no matter how good your game is, sometimes they're just big brands that they're just going to take over. Texans and Texas and A&M was always going to be the biggest show this weekend, period. Even if Michigan was good, I'm not sure that Ohio State and Michigan would overshadow Texas and Texas A&M.
You don't think Ohio State and Michigan are going to get like double the audience of Texas A&M?
I don't know. Do they take place at the same time? Do they take place at the same time?
No, they don't play at noon.
No, they're not head to head.
19 million last year.
Yeah.
Sure, they'll both get a huge audience. I don't know. They're both a huge audience, and no matter what, even if Iowa State was 11-0 and Kansas State was 10-1, at best you're taking third place to that. And
Yeah.
that's the tricky part there. So instead of saying we're going to put all of our good rivalries the same weekend that everybody else is putting all the rivalries, let's put them a little bit earlier and get those. I mean, you still have this last weekend in the Big 12 is the most interesting weekend as a conference by far. But you can take those big high, the big high viewership rivalries, and I would say Kansas State or a Holy War or Arizona State, all that kind of stuff. If you could move those up a little bit and showcase this is when our big rivalries are, when the SEC isn't doing it or the Big Ten's not doing it or something like that. I think it's a conscious effort to zig instead of while everyone's zagging type of thing.
Should anybody outside of a particular rooting interest in this conference, should they be rooting for Colorado to represent the Big 12 in the playoff because
Yes.
they'll get the most attention?
Yeah, I think.
It's
Yeah,
tough.
I do. I think.
You know,
I mean, the three of us don't want that to happen, right? But there is something to be saying. Somebody that can draw 10 million to a regular season game against Colorado State, that number would be massive if they got in a championship game.
Okay, I'm going to bring out a point here. I put it out on social media after the game the other night. Colorado's played the weakest schedule in the Big 12. They've played 5 of the 7 bottom teams in the Big 12, and they play Oklahoma State this week. They didn't play BYU, didn't play ASU, didn't play Iowa State. Like, Colorado, they set it up for a cakewalk for Colorado. Now, granted, most people didn't think ASU would be this good, but still, Colorado has had by far the easiest path, and maybe it's coming back to bite them because their strength of schedule is pretty bad. So maybe it's coming back to bite them in the end. But I'm so over Colorado. I'm tired of Colorado.
So
Yeah.
hang on just a second on that one, Michelle, because you brought up a good point. So I love your topic here, but the Big 12 is so topsy-turvy. I think you hit on it. Like, Texas and Oklahoma have ridiculously different, disparate schedules in the SEC, and I've attacked that because the SEC just botched that. But this is a good schedule at the beginning of the season because Oklahoma
at the beginning of the season, yeah,
Utah
It was a tough
good,
schedule. Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I mean, well, just run through it. Nebraska, that's a regional rivalry.
Well, yeah.
Colorado State throughout the
Conference game.
records. UCF, though, that's a road game. You're never sure what you're going to get there. Kansas State was picked to possibly win the conference. Arizona was supposed to be challenging for the conference lead. You had Utah, that's a horrible team to take in the middle of November. And then you finish with Oklahoma State and Kansas. This schedule right here probably on paper was the most difficult to start the season.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I would argue ASU's was difficult. When you're playing at Kansas State, at Oklahoma State, at Arizona, when you look at the start of the again, if you're going back to the start of the season, there were 5 Big 12 teams nationally ranked. ASU had every single one of them on the schedule, and 3 of them were on the road. So I would argue, if you want to go back to the start of the season, I would say Arizona State had the toughest schedule.
And it was interesting. I would say didn't have the toughest schedule, but we had a very smooth. And the beginning of the season was a very smooth ramp up in difficulty throughout the whole season, finishing with 2 monster weeks at Utah, home against Kansas State, which, at that time, at the beginning of the season, we were all thinking like that could be top 15, 10 showdowns 2 weeks in a row type of thing. And then Utah lays an egg and is just bad. And but then you got like Cincinnati's not bad. Cincinnati's solid, and Texas Tech is solid, and UCF is fine, and stuff like that. So you kind of get these weird little humps throughout the whole season. But Colorado, I think to kind of return to the original question, the question you have to ask yourself is, because one, they're going to watch Colorado because of Deion, 100%. That's Deion and Travis Hunter. Those are the 2 reasons you watch Colorado right now. And the question is are the eyeballs tuning in to watch Deion and Travis Hunter valuable to the Big 12, or are they valuable to Deion and Travis Hunter? Because one, I think everybody is asking the question is, how long is Deion going to be there? Because I know there's plenty of speculation that if the Cowboys decide to trade up and go number 1 to draft Shedeur Sanders, that they would just hire Deion to follow him. Or ever, maybe that's a thing. If you think that if if you think that Deion's going to be at Colorado for 5 or 10 years or something, that I'd be shocked if he was there for 10 years. But if you think he's going to be there for 5 years, maybe it's valuable to you, because if he's there for long enough, Colorado could be good long enough that it matters. If you think that he's just kind of there to do what he's got to do and get to the NFL as soon as he can, then I don't know if Colorado being in the playoff is that valuable to you. Because then as soon as Colorado leaves, now you have a mini Texas and Oklahoma problem. You say, well, now the Big 12 is really bad because Deion's not there and their only playoff team, he just left, type of thing. So now you have another little, a new perceived but not actually existent power vacuum there that now the Big 12 is still chasing that. Okay, we need to legitimize ourselves. So I think it would actually potentially it'd be good for the Big 12 like this year in terms of like revenue distribution, I guess, but like long-term perception, I don't think it helps at all, and potentially could hurt depending on what happens.
Yeah, he's always going to be on the edge of retiring or leaving. There's no doubt about it. I had him going to Florida, and that didn't work out so well because Florida is now playing good football. So everything you guys are saying is exactly right. I'm just sometimes you have to strike one of the irons hot, and you can't, don't complain. About a gift horse. So, eyeballs are eyeballs, and it might not be great for Colorado, but I think it could potentially be good for the team that they play and the conference overall. Now, this season, the Big 12 screwed it up. They could have have 2 teams in the playoff almost guaranteed if they had continued on. If you'd kept the teams winning, if Iowa State had kept winning, if Kansas State hadn't stubbed their toe, if BYU had kept winning, and for that matter, if Arizona State had kept winning, I think we would be in a better position. Unfortunately, it's eat your own time, and this is kind of where we are at the end of the season. So whoever comes out of the conference championship game is almost 99% sure to be only one team, and we just have to hope that team will go and win a game.
No matter what, you just can't get blown out in the playoff. You cannot get blown out.
Yeah, I agree.
For anybody that watches me on a regular basis knows I don't let people off the hook that make certain comments that are either stupid. I'm not going to say this is a stupid comment, but Michelle can speak to this. Mississippi State, Arizona State, I watched most of that game. That was not a close game. The final score looked close. Arizona State ran them out of the building. Mississippi State scored a bunch of garbage points at the end and made it look close. That was not a close football game.
No, like I said, with Arizona State, it's just, when you look at these teams that are the 4 teams that are in the hunt here, like I said, I think Iowa State's one of those teams that's always going to be good. So I don't think the fact that they're there is a big surprise. Obviously, with BYU and ASU, those 2 are huge surprises. And with Colorado, I think we all knew that they weren't going to be as bad as they were last year because they got the 2 best players in the conference probably. So we knew that they were going to be better. So I kind of like just the mix of the teams, and I like the fact that there are some teams that nobody expected that are there because people aren't going to get complacent year after year that it's the same old teams like it is in some of the other conferences.
I agree 100%. I think you're exactly right, and I think we have to turn a weakness into a strength. We started the season saying parity was going to be good because you're going to have an opportunity. Every team has a chance to play for a championship at the end of the season if things fall where they may. You make it to the first and second college football playoff rankings, and it was obvious immediately the Big 12 was going to get screwed, and they were doing everything they could to get screwed. And so you look at it analytically and you say, okay, well, maybe we do need to revisit the idea of maybe it would be better if the conference had 5 great brands that every year are always going to be competing. And now we come back full circle, and I've sort of changed my mind now 3 or 4 times this season that I think we have to turn the parity thing into a strength. And the only way to do that is for the conference to continue to turn over. Next year, we'll have Arizona bounce back. We'll have certainly Utah's not going to just wait around. They've got money to spend, and they're going to be doing things. Oklahoma State, are you kidding me? They're always going to be near the top of the recruiting rankings. So I think we just have to take that and use it to our best ability. And I know this, BYU's all in. They're about to pay $7 million for a college basketball player to come out this next year and be on their team. The football program is now getting money that the church was afraid of spending because they didn't want to get sued. They didn't want to be against the law before NIL came out. And that's just one program out of 16. I think NIL's changed the deal. I think Arizona State's coach coming out and basically begging for money for his players. You guys want to keep winning? Pay these guys. You can't be much more bald-faced than that. I'm not sure what's going on at Iowa State, but I can't imagine they're going to sit back and just wait for the NIL bus to pass them by. So
the interesting thing is in the next year, this is more like of a business of college football thing, but like in the next year or two, with the different lawsuits and the different action in Congress and stuff like that, NIL may just be part of athletic departments in a year or two. So
maybe
that's going to be.
I wouldn't guess that.
Yeah. So talking to Iowa State's we will director, I talked with him somewhat regularly. Wherever the general belief right now is that if things go in Congress how they think they're going to go, and lawsuits come out how they think they're going to come out, that NIL is going to end up getting just merged into athletic departments, basically. That's what he thinks. We'll see. Right. Who knows? But that's not necessarily the point. I'd be curious to see. So the next year or two, because the next year is the first time there's a basketball non-conference tournament where it's really geared around NIL, and Iowa State's taking part in that.
That's in Vegas, right?
I believe so. Yeah, Iowa State's going to be in that, so it's really centered around where all the TV revenue it turns into NIL money. Right. And I know that they're working on another thing for I don't know if it's next season or the year after that, where another like big non-conference neutral site thing that's really NIL heavy, like if it's Iowa State and UConn or something, Iowa State and UConn at the United Center or something like that. Yeah. Where it'd be. I would be curious to see if the Big 12 will pursue something like that and say we'll play. I mean, Iowa State and Kansas State are playing in Ireland next year for a thing. That's not an NIL thing, but I would be curious to see if the Big 12 would try to do something like that and try to organize more non-conference situations that are those kind of the NIL games, right, where it's just we're going to dump it and we're going to get lots of people to come in because you can play in this game where just for this one game you might make 50 or 100 grand in NIL money just for this one game, and you can really help everyone in the league start attracting talent like that. It's a little bit tougher to do in football because schedules are so much more restrictive than basketball. But I'm curious to see. I mean, Brett Yormark is at least a very creative guy. He's trying to find creative solutions to help the Big 12 stand out and to really improve that situation. So that's a fascinating one. I think we're going to see a lot of changes in that universe in the next year or two as different lawsuits and legislation is passed or not passed, or what decisions come down. So that world is changing quite a bit. But
I could say this too, that from the NIL perspective, ASU was pretty slow to catch up, pretty slow in the game. And a lot of that was the previous athletic regime. But I think they're nowhere near the top, but they're kind of in the middle now. I would say out of the Big 12, they're kind of in the middle. They're in the game. But having the success that the football team has had is starting to generate more and more and more because people are seeing that, and you can see it. And then the other thing I look at what ASU's done is they've extended both of their coordinators for 3 years.
Yeah.
So I think that is I think that's huge. And I've actually got a note from a person this morning that said, apparently Kenny Dillingham got like a $200,000 bonus for winning 9 games. He called everybody in and said that he was taking that bonus and he was splitting it among his other staff members.
Oh, cool.
Who does that? Okay.
So we had something similar in COVID where Matt Campbell helped pay his assistants when money was short during COVID. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was not necessarily his coordinators, but like support staff people that really aren't paid what assistant coaches are paid. But I also see what ASU is doing with the NIL and what their athletic director has done, and where they might be in the middle of the pack, they've just come light years from where they were. Right. And everybody's always said ASU is a diamond in the rough. Oh, it's the sleeping giant. Well, I think now we're starting to see that it actually can be that. And when you've got a school with as many alumni as ASU has and throughout the country, I mean, maybe there is potential there that we're finally tapping into. So I think ASU in what the moves that they have made in the athletic department have kind of shown that maybe they are all in, and we'll see what happens. But certainly when you're doing what they're doing this year, that goes to show what can happen when you've got an administration that's buying in finally.
Yeah, and the
sorry,
NIL
go
thing
ahead.
looks a little bit different for every school too. Where if you look at like Baylor's and TCU's and BYU's that had they kick out lawyers and doctors and things like that, where you can kick out these really high earning alumni. Iowa State and West Virginia are kicking out farmers, miners, engineers. So it's a very blue collar. Like a lot of our NIL stuff has been, we have 3 or 4 different NIL beers, and we have and like We Will Collective has been, they've got frozen pizzas and stuff like that. I mean, they're like, Iowa State is funding NIL through. I mean, they've got a few high end. I mean, most fan bases have at least like a couple higher end donors, or at least something like that can help contribute for something big. But Iowa State and the Iowa States and West Virginias and Kansas States are having to fund their NILs through really down and dirty grassroots efforts. So, but then you get, like I said, then you get the private schools that can typically throw around a little bit more money just because they got private donors, or the BYU has a church, stuff like that. It's everyone's got different situations. So it's interesting to see how everybody handles it going forward too.
I just want to say something really quick, Mark. The church does not give any money to the athletic department of BYU. Never has. So let's not start any more rumors. I fight those on a daily, but the church pays absolutely no money into the athletic department. And in fact, if it didn't have donors, they support something like 40 teams, which is going to, they haven't talked about paring those back, but you're already seeing at Michigan, at Ohio State, at Oregon. Well, not only are they begging for money, but they're saying we're cutting back on programs. We're lowering the number of athletes, but we're paying more to the athletes that we already have. And I think that is the new normal. And you're going to have a lot more private funded or, parent supported club teams that are going to take over the Olympic sports or something like lacrosse that you might not see ever again come back, because anymore it's a basketball football world.
And I think we're finally out of the era of the facilities arms race where everyone's just trying to compete to see.
I agree with you.
Locker room.
Yep, I agree with you.
Yeah, and buying out coaches early and stuff like that. I think we're pretty much gone from that.
I'm glad you said that, because that is a huge button for me, right? And Mark, I think maybe if you're not going to do a show on this, maybe we could do it next Monday. I think the whole idea of the big buyouts now for coaches are pretty much going to disappear. Neil would have been gone at West Virginia if they didn't have to worry about paying players NIL money. That money is drying up. The donor that used to come along that already was giving money to the athletic department, but now is writing a massive check to get rid of a coach that he just doesn't like the way he looks at him on Saturdays. Those days are done. I cannot think of one program in the country that can afford to get rid of almost any coaches on a whim. I don't think that's coming back.
There's the NIL era has introduced massive donor fatigue to a lot of people, where it's just like, oh, give me this. Where it's like, I already, like, for my season tickets, we make I can't remember what the donation is, but it's over $1,000 or whatever it is to get our season tickets or whatever, and that's like on the low end. But you get that, and then it's like, well, now I'm going to donate to the NIL monthly, and it's going to be this, and it's going to be this, and it's going to be this, and it's like, oh gosh, now you're just bleeding me dry because I have to donate to this group, and I have to donate to this group, and this group, and this group, and I would say wrestling has its own collective and stuff like that. So it's like, it's its own, there's some major donor fatigue coming in where now people are like, okay, I'm not just going to write you I'm not going to write you $1 million check to get rid of whoever, to get rid of Neil Brown or something like that, who's been like, not great, but fine, like not fireable bad necessarily. But, I think finally we're out of that era. That era was irritating as hell to me. The constantly buying coaches out and hiring, the coaching carousel was totally spun out of control. And then meanwhile, everybody's spending 10, 20, 30, 40 million dollars on facilities that, they were already good. Now they're just ridiculous.
Right.
Better than NFL locker rooms.
Those are really good points. I do think it's, going to have a trickle down effect as well. Assistant coach mobility isn't going to be as much anymore. Right. It used to be you just, Alabama would just steal your elite defensive coordinator just because they could, and they could still do that. but they need money to go to other places. So I think you're going to have longer tenured coaches and staffs that are going to stick together longer, simply because the money isn't there to just willy-nilly be upsetting these programs.
And for a while there, you had the Nick Saban coach, the Nick Saban Rehabilitation Center for college coaches. Like,
that's true.
He revived a bunch of careers doing that. Like,
because he's really good.
He is very good. Yes.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Mark.
No, you take off on this, Nathan. I was going to ask this question, and I'll preface it by saying I understand, or I do. I don't know that a lot of people will when it happens, but whatever team that is from the Big 12 that enters the college football playoffs, and whatever the result of that first game, whether it's a win or a close loss or a somewhat respectable 2-score loss, or it's 65-7, that score just kind of came to mind, something like that, regardless of what the outcome is, people should understand there's like 5 or 6 other teams in this league that would have been just as competitive, or based on a matchup may have been actually a better matchup and been more competitive than the team that actually showed up. So that needs to be understood. It's not like Ohio State's showing up, so there's nobody else that can take their place in this league. Oregon would be the example this year. But other than that, you got this drop off. So these teams are almost interchangeable from a quality standpoint. But that said, who is the best team, most equipped, best equipped, most talented team to take on a juggernaut from one of these other conferences?
It's going to be very hard to not introduce my bias into this.
Oh, do it. We're here for bias. That's what we're here for.
I think she might be muted.
We've all seen so much of our team, and I know I don't get to watch as much of the other games as I'd like, just because my team's playing at the same time as other teams. And Iowa State has not been on ASU's schedule, so I can't say that I've watched a lot of Iowa State. So I think that's a pretty hard question to answer.
I'm going to give my biased take, but I think there's an unbiased argument to be made also in my favor. So I'm going to do my best to do that. When healthy, especially, Iowa State is, to me, the most complete team in the conference in terms of they can pass the ball, they can run the ball, they have a very good defense. To me, it's if you're looking at a balance perspective, I think Iowa State is the most balanced team in the conference in terms of just being good at most things. Now, health is injuries exist, and obviously Iowa State is still banged up on defense, but they're getting healthier. Jack Sadowski is back. Will McLaughlin is back. Jack Sadowski has played very well the last couple of weeks. So now they're down really just a couple linebackers, and the big one's Caleb Bacon, which from what I understand is he may be back for a playoff game. If Iowa State were to make a playoff, Caleb Bacon might be back for that, which would be a massive, massive bonus. So my proposition would be that Iowa State is the most complete team in the Big 12 as far as just being able to do everything fairly well and having an elite secondary and having, 2 of the probably 3 or 4 best receivers in the conference. That I think that probably gives them the best shot. But if you look at a team like Colorado that can be super, super explosive on offense, can get in, they can get into shootouts with anybody. It depends on the matchup, really. I mean, it's totally dependent on matchup. But if you were just taking like a team, I think Iowa State would be a good candidate just on balance, and they can generally defend and move the ball against most styles of teams.
Yeah, I don't think you could pick anybody but Iowa State, in my opinion. I think Arizona State is very good, but BYU proved that they're mortal. And if they didn't give up 21 first half points, that game turns out differently. So I would love to say my team, but I got an offensive coordinator that can get himself out of jail. So I don't know. It's hard to, be a proponent of anything that's that bipolar, two halves of football that are completely whacked. So
Sure.
Of the teams that are still competing, I think Colorado showed its flaws over the weekend. Not being able to run the ball and control the tempo of games is going to kill Colorado, whoever they play. but in a one-off, if they get the first round bye. And I'm not sure. I think right now, any Big 12 team that has 2 losses that wins the Big 12 championship game is going to get that 4 seed.
I agree. I agree.
I'm nervous about Boise State. I'll be honest.
No, Boise
Me
State.
too. It's ridiculous, though. I don't know why we're even having this conversation.
You know why we're having this?
You know why
we're having this? It's because college football discourse is broken, and right now the best game on Boise State's schedule is losing by 3 to Oregon. By
a long time ago. A long time ago, too.
Right. It's stupid, right? Because they just barely beat a terrible Wyoming team, and they jumped up a spot.
Okay, so here's another thing. Go back to that. ASU boat raced Wyoming. Boat raced them.
Yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
And so I don't even know how this is a discussion. It just blows my mind that Boise State's a consideration. I'm sorry.
Boise State is everybody's like favorite underdog. They have if Travis Hunter didn't exist, they have the runaway Heisman favorite, literally, and they're kind of always they're always college football. They're forever college football Cinderella until they get into a power conference, which they're never going to. Right. They have Ashton Jeanty, so they're kind of they're the fun team that does stuff, whatever. But right now, they just barely beat Wyoming, and their best win is losing to Oregon by 3. That's
Didn't they just barely beat Nevada too?
Yeah. They've been scraping by in the Mountain West, but straight up, they're going to win the Mountain West. They're probably going to remain. They're going to finish out with 1 loss, and they're not going to go anywhere because SEC teams are going to continue to lose it to each other, and they're just going to keep floating or staying where they're at because college football discourse is dumb.
Well, I'm hoping that maybe a strength of schedule factor weighs in. Where like let's say it's ASU, okay? They've got a great road win at Kansas State. They've got the win over BYU. So I'm hoping that cooler minds will prevail, God forbid. But I guess I'm hoping that maybe a strength of schedule component comes into play at the end, and in the end, they'll put the Big 12 team at the 4 slot. I hope.
Because if they don't, the next champ is going to the 12 seed. They're not going to the 5 seed. They're going to the 12 seed, and you're not even hosting a playoff game at that point.
You might not even get a playoff spot.
I think Notre Dame demolishing Army last weekend probably locked up the Big 12 getting a playoff spot, but maybe. I don't think it's any sort of guarantee that you get one of the buys.
That 4 seed is not a great place to be either because you play the Oregon, probably second best team in the country or the third best team in the country.
Yeah, it's not great. But no matter what, you're in the semifinals of this or the quarterfinals of the playoff, and that's getting a bye in the playoff for the Big 12 is good.
And I think they'll get it. I think a 2-win team.
Yeah.
I think a 2-win team. Sorry, 2-loss team.
2-loss team. Yeah.
The only one that upsets that is Colorado, and that's Colorado. I don't think they knock them down either.
Go ahead.
I'm
sorry, Nathan. The issue could be if a team that loses this weekend still makes the Big 12 championship game. And
I said a 3-loss team.
There's 8 teams right now that have a mathematical shot of getting into the Big 12 title game. Like if Iowa State and BYU and Arizona State all lose this weekend, like Kansas State could or like there was a scenario I can't remember where it's like all 4 of the top 4 lose, and the championship game is Baylor Texas Tech or something stupid like that or whatever. And it's like. It's not going to happen. But like,
get a playoff spot.
But that situation, that is a nightmare scenario for the Big 12. Honestly, right now, if you're the Big 12, you have to have one of the top 4 that's right now at 2 losses. You have to have one of those 2. So it's really just Iowa State, BYU, and Arizona State.
Right.
If it's not one of those 3, it is a nightmare for the Big 12 because they may not make it, and that would be a disaster is to have a conference champion that doesn't make the playoff. That'd be horrible.
Well, I think that's where strength of schedule comes into play too. Again, going back to Colorado, their strength of schedule is a lot worse than the other 3 teams. So,
right.
And everything that I've heard and seen said that that Colorado was probably the number 4 of the 4 teams just because of their strength of schedule. And they lost to teams that they shouldn't have lost to. I mean, let's be real. And if you go back to now, ASU's win over Kansas is looking a hell of a lot better now. than it did
I would
a month ago.
I would not want to play Kansas.
I
to
wouldn't
as a
want
win.
to play Kansas.
I wouldn't
right
want
now
any
either.
part of Kansas.
Oh wait,
right now.
I just did.
Yeah, same. Same.
It's there. Yeah, and that's what's so topsy-turvy, I guess, to sort of bring this full circle. The Big 12 is going to be this league that for the next several years, unless something mammoth changes, we're going to have this rotation at the top. And at the same time, you're going to have teams at the bottom that if you decide you're not going to get involved in NIL, and I'm just going to say this to Utah fans, I'm not necessarily a favorite guy, but Kyle Whittingham, in my opinion, needs to retire. He looks after that Iowa State game, he looked just dead on his feet, and he has a life to live. He's only 65, and honestly, this team, I don't know how they rebuild with a coach in waiting. I told this to Wild Ute, my partner, when they announced Morgan Scalley was going to be the head coach in waiting, right? He was going to be in there whenever Kyle left. I told him that day Utah was going to fall apart. It's because you can't have a ship with two captains. Yeah. I don't care what anybody thinks. If you're a player and you've got somebody sitting in front of you, who are you looking to that you're actually going to be replying to?
Who's in charge?
Yeah. They just lost a huge recruit to USC, a defensive end. And I think in the offseason, it's going to be transfers, and Utah could be down for a while. And it's because Kyle was not early to adapt in the NIL transfer portal era. He simply thought it was for future players. And this is a warning for the rest of the Big 12 and all of college football. If you don't step up with money, resources, and support, your school will disappear unless you're one of the 15 blue bloods in the country. And that's just the way it's going to be, because in the next 10 years, those teams will not be competing at the top level.
And I don't think Cam Rising for a 100th year back in college football is good for anybody either.
No,
I think he's going to come back, though. I think they're going to have him back.
Well, hang on a second. That's true if Kyle sticks around. Kyle said he's welcome back if I'm coaching.
If you're a Utah fan, you don't want any part of that.
I don't think so. You got to move on. You got to move on at some point.
I don't know. You're the quarterback for Vanderbilt. You sue for an extra year. You get more money in NIL money. Then you're never going to get drafted. Unless you're going to become a coach, you're never going to get big money. This is their one chance for these kids to get any amount of money at one time. If I would be suing for a 9th year, for heaven's sakes. Just go back and play football.
I mean, Cam Rising is never going to make as much money next year as he would being an injured quarterback for the Utah Utes. He will never make enough money to equal that.
$4 million.
He is not an NFL player.
Yeah, $4 million in 2 years.
Yeah, I'd stay.
I would too.
I'd be an injured backup quarterback for 2 years at that money. I can figure it out. I don't know. Utah's in a sticky situation, and Oklahoma State is also in a difficult situation.
Yeah,
because
Mike Gundy's the exact same.
So Mike Gundy he's a good coach. Kyle Whittingham has two very good coaches.
Absolutely.
Both have been slow to adapt. Now, Utah and Oklahoma State had two different problems because Gundy swung and missed big time in the portal. They tried to basically build their entire roster through the portal, kind of like Colorado did, and they missed big time to the point where they basically just didn't take a high school class like 2 years ago. So right now there is that foundation is made of nothing. It's made of paper mache, and now you're losing your quarterback, which wasn't very good anyways, but your backups are worse somehow. They're losing Ollie Gordon.
Malachi Smith's going to be a good.
Maybe, I don't know, but then they lost. Ollie Gordon went on a milk carton this year. Everyone thought he was going to be a Heisman contender, and he's nothing. He's nowhere. He's going to be in the NFL. He's probably going to be a 2nd round pick and probably have a long career. But right now, and they're losing Brendan Presley. Oklahoma State might be in the dump for a while unless they just finally decide, say, we need to move on from Gundy. But they're in a sticky situation because Gundy has an automatically renewing contract.
Yeah, they can't get rid of.
He has a perpetual contract as long as he wants to be there, which is now somehow might be just as bad as the ACC's TV deal.
Yeah. I love it.
I was going to run down the Big 12 schedule for the final weekend, but we will just let people know. Look it up. Almost every game matters to some level.
Every game does.
Every game this week matters.
Utah and UCF? Does that one?
I think it does. I think
Yeah,
it could
it'll affect the
dictate,
tiebreaker. Yeah, it'll affect the tiebreaker.
Okay.
and I think it does. It may dictate what Kyle Whittingham does. I think it's quite
Yeah.
possible.
Mhm.
And do they keep Malzahn around?
I think they
Yes.
should. Gus Malzahn's a great coach. You got to
I
keep
don't know
him.
if he's great. He had a great player and won a national championship, but I haven't seen Gus Malzahn show that
He
he's
did
a
not
great
win a national
coach
championship.
at Auburn.
No, but like I think if you
No.
just look at like
Yeah, he
if
did.
you
He
look
lost-
at
he
like
lost the national
well-respected
championship.
figures in college football, like the
No.
people that college football coaches think are good
Am I
coaches.
wrong, Mark?
Yes.
Gus Malzahn.
Gus Malzahn has a national championship.
No. He
No,
lost the national
Gene Chizik
championship
won
game
the
to
won
Florida
the.
State.
Oh, okay.
Gene
Yeah.
Chizik
All right.
won the national championship.
Gene
with
Chizik,
FAU.
pride of Iowa
that's-
State.
And that's somebody that I completely forgot. Okay, I'm wrong.
Don't worry, we all forgot about Gene Chizik. Or we've been trying to. We've been trying to.
I should
You've
have
been
known
trying to,
better.
yeah.
I should have
All
known
right.
better to say anything that Mark didn't say.
Yeah.
Michelle, let everybody know what's going on with you and what you got working on this week.
Things Kenny Dillingham has done right that's turned this program around. We've got a couple other Territorial Cup specials this week, obviously. But yeah, it's fun. Like I've just seen the groundswell of support for this team, and it's been pretty amazing to witness. And Kenny Dillingham is just a breath of fresh air. I've always said I don't know when the guy sleeps because he just seems to be the guy that's here, there, and everywhere, and just he's fascinating.
Michelle, appreciate you being here. Everybody check out Michelle's work at Arizona Republic. There you see her X handle right there, and Gardner Sports. Michelle, appreciate you being here. Have a fun
Thanks,
weekend.
anytime.
Good to see you.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Bye.
Levi, why right Natty Light, everyone, SB Nation, and then also keep in mind, Levi is firing up a new show here at the Voice of College Football, talking Iowa State football. So when can we expect that to show up?
I think next week on Tuesday, probably at 7:00. I think right now we're not 100% finalized on the time, but probably like 7:00 next Tuesday. Next Tuesday evening, we'll be live doing our first Iowa State football show and hopefully talking about a matchup with maybe Arizona State in the Big 12 title game.
Awesome. Levi, appreciate you being here.
Absolutely. Thanks
It's
for
nice
having
to
me.
meet you. We'll see you
Yeah,
later.
it's nice to meet you. You know what? You know what's funny about this about tiebreakers this weekend is we want you to win just as much as you want you to win.
I know. And yet I don't want you to win. It's kind of screwed up that way.
Hopefully Kansas State has nothing to play for and is like, whatever.
I don't know. They looked good last week. I would be on upset alert for Kansas State.
We'll figure it out. It's Farmageddon. Matt Campbell.
Oh,
owns them.
so
There we
by
go.
saying that, Levi, does that mean that, and I'm holding the clicker, like I have half clicked you out and I'm just holding it. So if my finger slips on a mouse, you're gone. And so don't blame it on me, but blame it on me because it's my fault, but it was not intentional. So does that mean that something happening on Friday could affect Kansas State? Okay, gotcha.
So because I think depending on results, I believe BYU could be mathematically eliminated before they kick off. Iowa
They
State,
play last.
Iowa State, even if they win, we'll still not know for sure because BYU kicks off a little bit after us. I think you guys are like the 9:30 kick.
9:30 your time.
9:30 us. Yeah. So even if I guess I'm trying now. When does Texas Tech play? Texas Tech and Oklahoma and Texas Tech and West Virginia kick off when?
I love weird scenarios.
Oh my God, these conferences are too big. This is dumb.
Hey, look, I know we're making fun of the Big 12.
So they kick off at 11 a.m. So because if we win and Houston beats BYU, our insurance policy is West Virginia beating Texas Tech. So potentially by game time, Iowa State would know if it's in a win and in. Because if all we need is either BYU to win or Texas Tech to lose, and then we are in a win and in. So if West Virginia beats Texas Tech at 11 o'clock, we kick off at 6:30. We could potentially know by then if Iowa State is in a win and in. If Texas Tech wins, we are going to play and hopefully win, and then we are just going to be waiting for the BYU game to get done to find out what. And then we will be the biggest BYU fans you've ever seen for the next like couple hours.
Right.
Which is crazy because most people will be thinking, well, they would want Houston to beat BYU because they want the better team to lose. But no, it changes, obviously, the tiebreaker scenario.
Four-way tie, it's Arizona State and Iowa State. If it's a three-way tie, there's a number of three-way ties that go every which direction.
That's
I think Colorado's got the most difficult road. They have to have the biggest upsets to get there.
Yes.
BYU would be the next one. And then Iowa State just needs BYU to take care of business and keep themselves in it, and then obviously win our game. And then Arizona State is not in a true winning in, but they're close. I think because I try to remember do they need us to lose to Kansas State maybe? I don't remember. I don't remember for sure. No, I don't think they do. No, it'd be there's one game that they are depending on, but it's like they're good.
Right.
Maybe it's Colorado, Oklahoma State that they're depending on. I don't remember now. I don't know. This is all so complicated. The conferences are too big. Go back to 10 team conferences. We're just be done.
Yeah, boy.
Gosh, these conferences are way too big. These tiebreakers are insanity. Because right now you're looking at teams getting in or out of the conference championship game based on games they didn't play in, and that happened back in September.
Yeah, we need divisions back as well.
And that's the issue. When you've got at least two teams that tie and they did not play, I have an issue with, I don't even think it matters that one team played a schedule where their opponent's winning percentage was 48% and yours was 44%. That really proves that they're better. Seriously.
The strength of schedule tiebreaker, I think that's the fourth tiebreaker. The strength of schedule tiebreaker sucks. I don't know why that's in there. Like, it's like Iowa State can't control who wins and loses outside of their game. Nope. Colorado can't do it. Arizona State can't do it. Like, Iowa State can't control that Utah was terrible. Yeah. They cannot control that.
And they're so close, too. It's not going to be like somebody played this ridiculously tough schedule and somebody else played this horrendous. It's always going to be like
you're splitting
48% versus 46%.
Yeah, it's all nonsense. So like you got that. The tiebreakers are bad. Like it's because when you're in a four-way tiebreaker, you can't like do the head-to-head thing anymore. So you have to like keep going down the tiebreakers, and it's a nightmare. I've got Iowa State's figured out. Like this is the flow chart of what we need to happen, but couldn't tell you what Arizona State's is. I don't know about BYU. I think BYU needs us to lose, maybe.
Yeah, or Arizona State to lose and then win their game.
And then you got Kansas State, who they're going to be coming in here like a bunch of tryhards, being like, even though they've got no shot, but they're going to try to go in like, well, we've got a shot. And then we don't.
Or they just want to upset your season.
Probably because that's very much like them because, we've done that to them. So
there you go. That's what a rivalry is.
They're going to remember the snow game and try to get revenge for that. But Matt Campbell owns Kansas State, so we're just going to keep moving along.
There you go.
Next Tuesday, everyone, Levi and the Iowa State Live Show debuts here at the Voice of College Football. So we will be sending you links and information on that. But next Tuesday with Levi, with possibly a Big 12 championship preview.
There you go.
Hey, Levi.
Please.
Thanks, man.
Thanks.
See you later.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Happy Thanksgiving.
And then there were two. So, Nathan, tell people about Big 12 Mafia.
Yeah, so our next show is tomorrow. We do them Tuesday nights at 8 Eastern. We run for a couple hours, talk all college football, but we focus on that particular show on the Big 12. And I think we do a pretty good job representing it. So if you're new to me or what we're doing, just go to YouTube and put in Big 12 Mafia or College Football Mafia, and both of those will populate straight to our YouTube page. Follow me on Twitter, and we're every Monday at my lunchtime, other people's 2 p.m. Eastern, and this is going to be a good show going forward. I appreciate you putting this panel together, Mark. This was good.
Yeah, it's been a whole lot of fun, and Nathan, we would not do it without you. So thanks for being here and making this show get underway. So I'm going to talk to the fine folks for a couple minutes before I get done. But I appreciate you.
Have a happy Thanksgiving to you and your family.
You too as well, Nathan.
Okay.
Good to see you.
See you later. Good to see you too. Bye-bye.
All right. Just want to remind everyone here at the Voice of College Football of a few things going on. So first and foremost, we've got a busy day, busy week. It's rivalry week, of course. So the schedule looks something like this. Later today, we've got Alabama live at 6, Texas live at 7 o'clock also, Missouri live. These are Eastern time zone. Rutgers at 7, Oklahoma at 8, Ohio State live at 8 o'clock as well. The Michigan live show has been moved up. I just got on my phone and was told that the Michigan live shows tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern time. And then again, you see what we have on display on Tuesday. Now, keep in mind again, the Iowa State live show starts next week, next Tuesday with Levi Stevenson, the Iowa State show. Now, for this Big 12 show, if you were here throughout, you see what we're going to pour into this Big 12 show. We are going to get some great guests, Nathan and myself, every Monday, 2 p.m. Eastern time. And this Big 12 show is moving to exclusively on the Big 12 channel. So if you're joining us on the main channel, it's going to be every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern time on the Big 12 channel exclusively right here at the Voice of College Football. I got so many things planned. So be looking out for Big 10 scenarios, Big 12 scenarios we just talked about. I will line those up on a video. The ACC, the SEC. We have released also my prediction on the college football playoff rankings to be released on Tuesday night. So that's out there for you as well. Tons of content coming. Ohio State, Michigan, Alabama, Auburn. All the rivalry games will be previewed here at the Voice of College Football. So be looking out for all of those videos here and on the various team channels. Right here at the Voice of College Football, we will see you on Tuesday night for the watch party, the CFP watch party, Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern.